my shoulder. And by the way, Eric's
I
secondary
can't help
duty
it.
assignment. Yeah, I know. Eric's secondary duty assignment is keeping me out of trouble, and so is Derek's. By the way, that's it.
Okay. So I think a lot of people watching are going to be really interested in, some of the criteria. I think a lot of it, so especially with retention, one of the parts is informing soldiers what the requirements are to transfer their GI Bill or their post 9/11 GI Bill to their dependents. And so us as counselors, we tell soldiers the time requirement, how long they have to be in service already, what the commitment is, the 4-year commitment from the day they transfer, and things like that. But do you think that there's anything that is really valuable for somebody to know if they're debating on transferring their GI Bill benefit to one of their dependents?
That's a great question, and I'm going to punt some of this to Eric and Derek. But what I will say, and then I'll punt it to Eric, is one, don't wait. Soldiers become eligible at the 6-year mark. So there is 2 components to the transfer. Well, the statement is this: soldiers earn the post 9/11 GI Bill because of their active duty service. The ability to gift it to dependents is a retention incentive, which falls directly in your world. And just like a bonus, any kind of aviation bonus or any kind of retention bonus, it works the exact same way. And it requires a 4-year additional duty service obligation. So a soldier becomes eligible at the 6-year mark. At that point, they can, if they meet all the other criteria, honorable period of service, no negative action flags, yada, yada. They can transfer it to their DEERS eligible dependents. The dependents have got to be loaded in DEERS. And then they can transfer to them. And then once they're approved, then they incur that 4-year ADSO. So why 4 years? So the Army in its infinite wisdom knows that at the 6-year mark, if we give you something like a 4-year retention, you get to the 10-year mark. And Sarnunez gave me the stats on this. The retention stats at the 10-year mark is incredible. It's like 80%, right? So our goal is to get those soldiers to the 10-year mark. And then the Army, then we can offer other incentives like retention bonuses, skills bonuses, assignments, those kinds of things to keep them. Because if you think about it, what rank is a soldier on average at the 6-year mark? If they're an NCO, right, they're probably like an E6, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they're an officer, they're captain moving into major, or they're a warrant officer. What's that skill worth in the civilian sector? And how hard would it be the Army to replicate that skill, right? It's really difficult. So it becomes really imperative that we hold on to that talent pool. So it's also a talent management tool. If that makes any sense.
Right. Absolutely.
So
That makes sense.
Take it away, Eric.
All right. As Mr. Marine said, the first requirement is the soldier has to have 6 years time in service in the armed forces. It doesn't matter if it's whatever branch. We sometimes deal with individuals that came from a different branch. That's the first requirement. Second one is the soldier has to have 4 years of retainability. This is where the retention NCOs come in. We get a lot of requests from soldiers that request tab on the MilConnect website. And then as we do the research, they're anywhere from a couple of months to 2 years short to be able to fulfill that 4-year additional service obligation. And then we tell them, hey, you need to go talk to your retention NCO, either extend or re-enlist, so you can meet the 4-year additional service obligation. And the good thing for as far as that's concerned, for the purpose of the transfer of education benefits, the soldier can extend or re-enlist outside the normal window. The third requirement is for a most active duty soldier, that's not a problem. They have to have 90 days of active duty time. For reservists, that can be a problem. Mr. Huther, I'll let you answer that one um, with the 90 days. And then the final requirement is the soldiers on the day of their request cannot be under a negative action flag or adverse action flag. So those are the 4 requirements. Mr. Huther, if you want to expend on that, 90 days for the reservists.
Yes, the 90 days for reservists tends to be really tricky to get, especially for enlisted soldiers, because according to the law, their basic training in AIT doesn't count towards eligible time until they've reached 24 months of active duty service. So a regular reservist who's only doing the 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year, it's very hard to find the 90 days of additional active duty somewhere, unless they happen to deploy, go on some sort of active duty orders for special work, or something like that. We've had mostly officers that really run into the problem where they have 18 years of service, 19 years of service in the reserves, good years of service, and yet they have 89 days of active duty. And they are not qualified for post 9/11 GI Bill. And if they're not qualified for the post 9/11 GI Bill, then they can't transfer yet. They need the 1 more day of active duty somewhere. So that is a big problem that we run into. Another issue that needs to be brought up, I think, as well, is we have issues with blended families, soldiers who start their families late in life. Because for children to use the benefit, the soldier must have 10 years of service. So we've had individuals who are on their 14th year of service, and yet they haven't been married yet. So then they do get married. They're okay because they're over that 10-year limit. But we've had soldiers who are, say, 6 years in, but they're later in life. They've come in late to the service. They've come in their late 20s, and they haven't reached the 10 years of service yet. And yet they may have a 15-year-old child who's getting ready to go to college themselves, but they can't transfer to them because they haven't got the 10 years of service yet. So there's lots of little moving pieces that service members need to kind of look at to make sure they meet all of the requirements when they go on to Mill Connect and do their due diligence and read everything, and before they click that submit button to make sure that they will get approved the first time around.